The Tao of Self-Confidence, episode 691. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. Visit our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits. Well, hello friend. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. I'm your host today, Sheena Yap Chan, and today I have a phenomenal lady on the show today. She has a background in film and martial arts, and she just recently competed for the Binibining Pilipinas pageant, which is the Miss Universe in the Philippines, and I'm really excited to have her on to share her story with us today on self-confidence. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Julia Saubier. Julia, how are you today? Maybe you can fill in a little bit more about yourself to the listeners.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to talk about this subject. I feel like it's very timely, and especially given my background and what I just did. But yeah, as Sheena mentioned, I have a background in film and martial arts. I'm half Filipino and half French. I was born in France and grew up here in the Philippines. And then I went abroad to NYU Abu Dhabi, where I studied film and politics. And then moved to London, worked in film for a bit, then moved to Beijing and did my master's at Peking University in Chinese cinema and economics. And then I just competed in the Miss Universe pageant here in the Philippines just this spring semester, and simultaneously also was finishing up my master's in China. So it was a lot, but I definitely learned a lot from the experience, and I'm really excited to talk more about it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And Julia, in your own words, how do you define self-confidence?
I think that self-confidence is really loving yourself. It's, being in love with who you are and appreciating yourself. And, no one's perfect. I think that takes a lot, especially when we're bombarded with so many images and ideas that tell us that, we're not worthy or we're not enough. But I think that self-confidence is really just loving yourself for who you are, accepting yourself for your shortcomings and your limitations, but having a really healthy relationship with your body, your mind, your ambition, everything about you. So, I think that would be my definition of self-confidence.
Thanks for sharing that great definition. And Julia, what was your life like before your discovery of self-confidence?
Oh gosh, I feel like, to be honest, I think as Asian women, we're bombarded with so many images and ideas of beauty that really has nothing to do with us. And unfortunately, as women, I think that the brunt of our idea of self-worth, so much of it is rooted in how we look. And that's unfortunate because I don't think that that's, the most important thing about a person, definitely not. But I think that that's the reality in many cultures, in many situations and circumstances. And unfortunately, as Asian women, I think that we don't have that many images or, cultural references or representations that really put us in an empowering light. And I'm talking about, our global media. Obviously, I live in the Philippines, so I do belong to the majority here because Filipinos are Asian. But even in our own culture and media and representations, you do see tendencies to put, women on screen who are more, who have Eurocentric features, who are white. There's so many ads for whitening. So, growing up, I was exposed to all of this. And I think I really then kind of turned away from, focusing on how I looked or really caring about that aspect of me. I mean, of course, you care about it. It's undeniable that it's going to be a part of you and a part of how people interpret and understand you. But I think I really focused on my studies and focused on developing myself as a person. And that really became like my source of self-confidence. So I didn't really seek validation or self-confidence from the way that I looked. Of course, when I was in confrontation with kind of thinking about how I looked and how it was perceived and appreciated globally, like that's when I would kind of reassess or take a step back or feel like, oh, well, this is awful that people don't recognize that I have this sense of self-worth. And so obviously that affects your confidence. But I think before I sort of took pride in my Asian features and took pride in how I looked and kind of understood who I am as an Asian and a mixed person, I think that I really based my self-confidence on, my character and my values and who I am. But it's not nice to have this, feeling of doubt or feeling like you're not enough. That was a very long answer.
Thanks for sharing that. I mean, that's something we all go through, right? Especially as women, like just women in general, that notion of beauty. I mean, you look at the cover of the magazine, it's like if you're not a size 0, you're not pretty. If you're too dark, you're not pretty. And, you see billboards everywhere, which is crazy because most of these photos are like altered to a T. They're fully edited, and we have to realize like it's not like that realistic beauty that that people don't show. Like beauty comes in all different forms, shapes, sizes, color, and we all have our own beauty that we have to just showcase, and it starts from the inside, and it'll come out as we keep working with our inner self. And what was that point in your life when you realized you were more than enough to go out there and be who you are today? What was that aha moment?
Well, I really like what you said. Like just to go back to that really quickly. Like there's so much like Photoshop and there's so much plastic surgery. Like we're not even aware of it. So like we're looking at all these images and we're like we want to aspire to that. We're like, okay, well if that's like the definition of beauty, then I guess I should like inch towards that. But we're not even in full understanding of how much these images and these people have been altered. And so it's like you're aspiring to something that's not even realistic. And I feel like that's really important to talk about as well, because kind of when you accept that that's just how it is, like when you accept that all these images are altered and all these people are altered, then I think you kind of feel better about yourself and what you have to offer, because you realize that it's unrealistic to aspire to something like that. But anyways, going back to your question, I think that the turning point was quite late in my life. I think probably when I left the Philippines and went away for college, because I guess if we're talking just about physical beauty, because I feel like my self-confidence with who I was and my character and what I wanted from life, I feel like that was always very, very strong, like very strong. But I think that, having a sort of self-confidence and your physical look, that really came much later, like when I went off to college, because I left the Philippines and, because I think that, of course, the Western-centric or Eurocentric beauty that's everywhere. But I feel like, especially here in the Philippines and, in my school environment and with everything that I was consuming and everything that, people were saying to me, I really kind of didn't take pride in my like Asian look. And I feel like that's pretty normal here. So it wasn't until I left the Philippines and went away for college that I really had this understanding of, why it is this way, like why we're basically brainwashed into thinking that, the standard, is the standard, and learned more about like global power dynamics and was also, immersed in a very diverse setting. And, for the first time was hearing that like, oh, people like really appreciated how I looked. So I think it was really probably in college when I was 18. That's when I first developed this sense of like, inner self-worth with regards to how I looked.
Thanks for sharing that. And, because of that, what's your life been like now?
Yeah, I think that just leaving your wherever you are and, gaining a better and bigger perspective. And then also I think in combination with, being in college, like being in this very like academic, intellectually rigorous sort of situation and kind of examining my values and my habits of mind, like that was also really fundamental in kind of giving me that sort of inner self-confidence or physical look. So I think combination of both of those things. But I think ever since I've realized this or kind of gained this inner superpower, I've become much more open and honest about criticizing these sort of institutions and systems that I think are failing us because they're telling us that we need to aspire to something that we're not. And I think that having this sort of clarity, I'm not perfect, obviously, like no one is, but like having this sort of clarity around this issue and having been abroad and looked at it from a distance and, even seeing it for what it is over there, because there's so much of it over there in Europe and the US and Canada and Australia. Like there's so much of this, privileging of a certain look and a certain, ethnicity. Like you see this in film, like my background is in film, and there's so much talk right now about diversity in the film industry, and people are wondering like, why aren't we casting more ethnically diverse actors? Why don't we have as many roles for Asians and other minorities. And I think honestly at the root of it is, there's a lot going on there, but one of the things is that our understanding of beauty and our understanding of who is worthy enough to get screen time, who's worthy enough of being the lead, who do we see in these inspiring, roles and positions of power. A big part of that is because our understanding of who fits into these roles is very limited, and it's very racist because it's been, how do I say this? It's been very, very limiting. Most of the roles that we see, the leads, they're all white. And even in America where, it has such a diverse population. So I think that really expanding this idea of, what it means to be beautiful and who deserves that attention and who deserves to see themselves in that inspiring way, that's really important as well. And making the link between this problem in, the lack of representation and in our conception or in our understanding of beauty, because those two things are linked. And unfortunately, not many people are making the connection. So I think that, since I've discovered this and gained more clarity around this, I've become more outspoken about, talking about these sorts of issues so that hopefully I can make people more, self-aware and give them sort of the confidence that they need, because they know that, it's not them, it's an entire system that pressuring them into conforming to an unrealistic standard and, basically putting forth images of, Eurocentric people in front of them. So I think just being more open and more outspoken about it, and then also it's kind of strengthened my motivations for wanting to work in film and wanting to sort of lead these conversations on race and nationalism and beauty and diversity, and how this is all reinforced by our, cultural references in films. So yeah, that's how my life has changed.
Thanks for sharing that. And Julia, to the woman who's listening to your episode, she may be in her own journey to self-confidence. What would be that one tip you would give to her?
Ooh, one tip only? Oh my God, that's so hard to just give one piece of advice. Okay, well, I think two things, if that's okay. Because you mentioned that I have a background in film and martial arts, and, both have been sort of, well, the first has been kind of very destructive, and then now it's become very empowering. And then martial arts has just been so incredible and sort of giving me that self-confidence. So I think for the first one, I'd probably relate it to film. I think it's really important to immerse yourself in stories and representations and sort of images of yourself that are inspiring and empowering. And I think that that's really important. So, looking to literature that affirms who you are, and, watching movies where you can relate to the lead because of, who she is as a person and because of how she looks physically. I think that that's really important, because just having sort of, cultural references and stories where you see yourself represented in an empowering way and an inspiring way, I think that that's really important for, building a strong sense of self-confidence as well. And the second one would be related to my martial arts practice. I think that doing sports, and I've been a varsity athlete my whole life and have a really important martial arts practice as well. I think that really investing in your physical health, and this also is an investment in your mental health. I think that really challenging yourself physically and working with your body, I think, can really give you a strong sense of self-confidence, because you will understand that you're so much more capable than you think you are. And I think that really operating at your physical limits, or really pushing yourself physically, I think that can really boost your self-confidence and give you a really healthy relationship with your body. And I think that sports and, working in a team setting or working in martial arts, I think that all of these things can have an amazing effect on yourself, because you realize your inner strength and your inner resolve. So I think that those would be my two pieces of advice. One, immerse yourself in, stories and culture that affirms you. And two, really, do sports and work with your body and test yourself physically, because through that you'll discover your inner resolve. And I think that that's something to be proud of, definitely.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing those amazing tips. And if our listeners wanted to get to know a little bit more about you and what you do or check out some of your work, is there any links or social media profiles we can connect with?
Yeah, sure. You can find me at, on Instagram or on Facebook. I have a public page now, or my Twitter, actually, I think is where I have like probably my most valuable kind of information. I share a lot about like what I read and, what I watch and my thoughts. So yeah, everything is just at Julia Saubier, and Saubier is Saubier. So at Julia Saubier, and you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And to our listeners, if you want to connect with Julia, you can also head on over to the taoofselfconfidence.com and search for Julia's name. Her show notes will pop up along with everything else that we talked about. And I really just want to thank Julia today for taking the time to share her story and tips with us on self-confidence. So thank you so much, Julia.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much, Sheena, for having me. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. I think it's so important that we share, our own journeys to self-confidence, because I'm sure that can, enlighten and inspire other people as well.
I totally agree. And thank you again for doing the interview. And to our listeners, be on the lookout for another new episode of another amazing woman's journey to self-confidence. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another amazing episode of the Tao of Self-Confidence. Get your free self-talk tape for building self-confidence by visiting our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com. Your inner journey to self-confidence awaits.